you see with the lights?
Oh, and I guess... No, that's good, that's good. Then you see Mike nice and clear. Cool. All right.
Also see with the lights.
There you go, Mike. Right, you can't see everybody in the background, but you can see me. This is Michael Lees. He's the filmmaker who we've been collaborating with on various different parts of the project. Kayla Ann from Create Caribbean is waving in the background amongst Annabelle and Zeffie, baby Zeffie. Ricardo's in the background as well, many members of the team and friends of the project and folks who have come for today. So Mike has put together several different films as part of the project, but it's really been a shared creative process. Now we're going to see two films, one of them all about Mike telling his own story in relation to his own kind of creative practice, but also one by a guy called Vino. I'll just let Mike introduce the films in a little bit more detail, and then we'll have a look at them, and then we can open out into a conversation, not just about those two films, but potentially about the other films that you've seen throughout the day. For example, Shadi's one at the beginning, and the others that we saw at lunchtime as well. So over to you, Mike.
Cool. Nice to meet everyone. The two films that are coming up are, so mine is basically focused around a photo series I did that was like recreating pre-Maria life in post-Hurricane Maria spaces. And Vino is like a crafter from a neighboring town, Morn Ratchet. He lives up on the hill, and the town below was one of the towns that got the worst beating from Maria. Literally, I think there were houses almost underground from all the rocks and rubble that came down the river, which usually is a little stream. And Adam actually discovered Vino, who has an interesting little craft shop, almost what he refers to as his museum. I don't know what much else you want me to say about it before. I think we can probably just go ahead and roll, and then any questions and stuff we can chat.
Cool, sounds good. I'm gonna log out, perhaps in the naive trust that we're going to get the connection back, but I believe in it now. We're doing a hotspot, so we'll see you shortly. I'll send you the link over so you can follow as we're going through, so you know when they finish. But
Okay, cool.
I'll call you back as well. All right. Speak
Okay,
soon.
perfect.
Okay, so first of all, we will look at Mike's film, and then we'll go over to Vino's afterwards.
Surviving storms.
Surviving storm.
Surviving storms.
Fresh food and water and community and also sense of freedom. I mean, these are all things that are just integral to being alive as a human being, and we take for granted in Dominica because we have them in abundance. But yeah, they're really not that abundant in a lot of the world. I think in many ways Dominica is an extremely free place. And some might even say free to a fault. But I think that ties into us never being able to be fully colonized the way other islands were, in part because of the topography, and then also in part because of the Negmawang society was extremely strong here. And I think that after something like Maria, you see that freeness, that wildness, that untamableness. It comes out in many ways. So the idea behind the Moving Back, Looking Forward series, after Maria, there's a point where all of us are sort of trying to pick our lives back up and create some sense of normalcy. But at the same time, you look around at the country, at the buildings, at just everything, and it's very not normal. And yet at the same time, there's a sort of grace in the way people are moving and putting things back together. And so I guess I wanted to kind of show those two things side by side, what our sort of mundane lives look like, but in the context of this disaster space. Hope and faith were both really strong themes that came out for me after Maria. You have a lot of people that have lost almost everything, but are still saying things like, thank God for life, or even thank God for water, or thank God for whatever it is that is left. And also this sort of like deep-seated knowing that things can and will get better. And I thought it was very interesting to me because I had just come off of my Uncivilized project where I read the Bible for the first time while I was living out in the forest, which is where I ended up weathering Maria. But it was interesting for me sort of having a whole new perspective on Christianity, and Dominica is a predominantly Christian country. So I don't know, I think I was able to interact with that more, and especially for me, like the photos where we were in the Anglican church, that was a recreation with a congregation and a priest, and I actually thought, you know, there's something quite magical actually about that building having no roof, because already it's this sort of like sacred space where people come together to worship God, but now having no roof at all, it's almost like being exposed to the heavens. Obviously, it's not very feasible for, you know, a regular service in case of rain or whatever, but yeah, there was some sense of divine in being exposed to the elements like that. And again, yeah, I think that ties into that hope and faith, and I think that again that comes through in that set of photos. Post Maria was almost like a huge awakening. Before that, I was thinking, all right, I'll come back to Dominica, do this project, and then I'll go to England or something like that. And this just like weird awakening happened after Maria, where I felt fully like grounded in Dominica and not wanting to go anywhere else. And it was a strange time post Maria, where we had so much less, but at the same time there was an abundance of gratitude for being alive, for fresh water, for community, for farm produce and all that kind of stuff. And also, I would say, a strong sense of hope and looking forward. And I think for me, in many ways, like these pieces, this series kind of encapsulates that time and mindset for me, which I would say is kind of like very formative in terms of like who I am now. There are countries that are more gifted with the natural resources and others less, but also there's many countries where they had these resources, but then through development, they essentially got ruined or disappeared. And so Dominica is this interesting case where a lot of times people will describe Dominica as being so far behind, but if you start thinking about these things as more of circular existence and circular time than linear, then us being behind actually makes us ahead of the curve. And I think we're most definitely ahead of the curve when we can still say that we can bathe in most of our rivers and we can still collect water from springs and not have to worry about them being polluted. It's funny, I think as I've got older, I feel like I'm deconstructing this idea that like time is linear and that it's much more circular, just as the climate and the weather and life and death. And it's interesting that for us, it's something that we need to deconstruct, whereas I think in a lot of other worldviews and indigenous worldviews, these things are like taken as granted and as obvious, and it's almost absurd to hear someone say, oh wow, I'm learning that this is the case now, when, yeah, I think in many ways, at least for many people, I guess it's quite obvious. But patterns repeat, time repeats, these disasters repeat, and as climate change intensifies, they're gonna repeat faster and faster until I guess we end up in a new age if I had the choice to tell myself something back then, I don't think I would tell myself anything. I think that this last couple of years, it all kind of worked out in a kind of a way. I think sometimes you just gotta go through things and not know what's coming.
So between the filmmaker's autobiographical piece, we'll now shift into Vino, and this is the last film that we'll see for the day. This one's got a subtitle with it, so I'm just gonna try and drop that over, and then we'll jump straight in.
Surviving storm.
And we are both generally born.
Surviving storms.
Surviving storm.
Surviving storm.
People call it to say a crack shop. But I don't do it work now. To me, I have more things looking like a museum than pure artistic. You know? My name is Alvin Adrian, better known as Vino. I'm a craft artist, specializing in oil painting. I do carving, I do carpentry, and the list goes on. Well, every time I pass me, I think about a lot of things on the road as an artist, because I do a lot of things besides raw talent. So every time I see a nail on the go, I have to pick it up. It can be a screw, because even though it's from somebody, that you can do a nail which probably, if you do buy it, you have to look for one. So I look at everything as a help once you can use your mind. I had a big brother of mine, which his name was Cecil, and we were both January born. He was 1st January, and I'm 28. We look alike in many ways, and I'm always say, Alvin, we took man that Cecil. He's natural of artistic, never lived anywhere. But we're very close, and I was the last one, so we always been around him. As you know, my mom was a teacher, so we always had crayon and pencil around in the early 60s, mid 70s. So now, after he passed away at the age of 18, he had some kind of cancer around his kneecap. I was so shocked to see how early he died at the age of 16. So I probably had to do like a pencil work on off alongside him and all around home. I said, well, one thing I could do to remember him, to follow the art from him, and which I did, and I've never regretted the entire episode. So when he passed on, I just said, I'll carry on that in his honor, and I've never stopped ever since. After the hurricane had done what it had to do, I went to town about 5 weeks afterwards, and going down from the old market to reach to the bridge. Every street I passed, I had to reverse back and start at the next street. All where I go to the bridge to go to get a vehicle to cross to. I've always stopped with a lot of mud and so. So I said, when I reach the street, the street was so good, so deep, water come from my eyes. So I said, well, what can I do to remember that day? I could call this way, I could mirror, Makush way. Not the same day, you know, as time goes by, looking for people with cloth, because everything must have come down from the rivers and wash ashore nearby. I got about 3 or 4 pieces, and I put that together what I joined, and I say I have to write a story about Maria. A young lady say that hurricane had everything in it: tornado, volcano, river, rain, water, and so I said, what? And I saw my same thing into my area. I say, I have to do something with that episode. And that's how that thing come up about. We tend to forget too quick as a people. And according to my friend, I've got a problem with that. Not to forget things too quick. as it was never that in the country. The country all was on the mayor. We all was on the stress. There was no big and small in that thing. Everybody was water. Everybody had a roof. Other that fly from here, there, and everywhere. Some had their roof completely up. Some had something partially, and everybody get a bit of it. So if there was something around, you see Maria, you were in Dominica. When Maria came down the river, had its part to play, it override the bank facing Rosso side, and the water defends the area, take out the houses, damage it, put down, and when we cemetery, it doesn't wash away every grave. What submerged, what died away, whatever. And now it had to pass through the church, damage this enter there, and every bench and door and so couldn't open up after Maria. People had to go there and help. MS was there as well. There was a contractor, they're trying to give a help. I don't know if it's through a job or whatever, to other guys. And I was there mostly each and every day with somebody whom I relate to go and give a hand. And every day I had about 6 feet covering all the benches, all the altars, all that was on the heavy mass. And it took a good money to get that thing to have mass sometime, but we don't, about 3 or 4 months after they could have done a proper mass down there. They get a heavy hit. I spent a lot of time with friends to come there and give a hand so that we could have a little service as time goes by, because without service, we are nowhere. About 6 or 7 vehicles walked down to the sea. Then there got a man went down, sit in the cabin. Then there got the person. But with Maria, a lot of damage went through the wind, and the horse got bad because of the spin from the wind. It's a enough spin. And any place that can withstand that, they have to be contact properly built, because one came to that for a week and nothing to do. Well, many Dominicans will not forget Hurricane Maria, those who saw it. But if your mind is not that focused, you might want to sideline it and see it will happen. But you that can create things and let people have you as a creator in certain things, you probably have a total role to play. Try to have a picture, not to really think back of what really happened to the destruction to the very, very bit, but at least something to give a little story, well, what happened, but look at that, we make out of it. And it's not easy to look at Maria and say, it's okay. You always have a glimpse of it, because all the work in the country, you will see something of Maria, which was eminent during the time it was. So it is.
Continue the conversation. We can turn the lights on now if you guys want to.
Yeah.
Good to see you, and there's no risk of anyone falling asleep. Wow. Perfect. Perfect. Okay, so everybody just saw Vino's film, and they just saw your autobiographical piece as well. I'll kick off by just asking one quick question to you, and then I'll throw it open to the room, and then if folks are able to speak up when you ask any questions in relation to any of the films, then hopefully Mike will be able to hear you. But if it doesn't come through sound-wise, then I can always relay it onto you, Mike, because I'm a little bit closer to the microphone. there was a nice quote in Vino's film which really resonated. It said, "It happened, you know," referring to Hurricane Maria, but look, it's that we made out of it. It happened, but look, it's that we made out of it. And he was describing himself as a creator and having a part to play as a creator. I wanted to ask you about the creative kind of flourishing or emergence that happened in that immediate wake, but then maybe in the longer to medium term afterwards, and what that part to play of creators is. Thinking about yourself, thinking about other Whitey Kubali Artists Association, whoever it might be, and that kind of that creative energy which Vino seems to have summed up so eloquently in just a couple of words, but that comes through in your work and that comes through in the work of others as well.
Yeah, I think honestly, in the face of any catastrophe or sort of like chaotic times, there's equal amounts of like disillusionment and concern and fret as there is like a sort of like a rebirth of creative energies. I think we're even seeing that like worldwide right now. Like it kind of feels like we're on the brink of things falling apart, and in that space, I think it allows people to like reimagine things as old systems come down. For myself, I could say like, I mean, it was just a completely different world to be in, like living a life of no electricity, no water, everything looks completely different, and you also aren't going to work or anything, so you have time to actually sit and think and not get distracted by social media and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, quite a good time in terms of creativity. And then also, yeah, so WA, which is the White Artists Association, basically kicked off after Maria. And now, so that's basically a visual arts association in Dominica that we've just been doing bigger and bigger projects. So actually, for the World Creole Music Festival just passed like a week ago, we did this massive sailfish installation, like a larger than life fish that you could like walk through, and we did all the scales, made it all out of like wood, tarp, scales, all that stuff, and of some of our like musical legends at the first. So just basically all these huge projects keep coming. I think even the Prime Minister came down to check everything out. So yeah, a lot of stuff going on.
It looked like I was suddenly coming back to the video to speed you along. I definitely wasn't. The connection was just breaking up, so I just bring in the tether closer. But that does give me a chance to open up to the room for anyone who might want to ask Mike any questions about anything that's been mentioned so far, or just comments as we go. So Gabrielle's just raised her hand, but let's still introduce ourselves just in case we can, because you appear quite far away to Mike.
I don't know if you can hear me, but hi Michael. So Michael and I grew up together. Michael, I found it really interesting how you touched on the fact that after Maria, you now suddenly didn't want to leave. And you know, you had plans of like moving to England or something after. Do you want to expound on that? What you think changed, or what was the moment where you realized that?
I think it was like on my journey across the island, and I kept meeting people because of my accent. They didn't realize that I live here, so a lot of them were good. I'm like, no, I live here, I'm not going anywhere. And this is sort of like, just like solidarity and appreciation. And it just kind of felt like we were all...
I made that disappear to keep the bandwidth, but we can still see you and we can still hear you. Go ahead, sorry.
Cool. Yeah, just there was a real sense of solidarity and resoluteness, and seeing how everyone sort of reacted in the face of a disaster like we'd never seen. It just really felt like this was the place to be and this was home. And yeah, up to now, I haven't changed my mind. Although anything's possible.
So Ava's got a question, and then we'll go to Audrey as well. So once again, introduce ourselves. I know you might have met already, but if you haven't met already, then please go ahead.
Yes, I think we met in Dominican, but good to see you again. I'm Ava Maxam with Manager Informatics Institute. Did I hear correctly that you had decided to live in the forest when the hurricane struck?
Yes.
Mike, can you explain? Can you explain a little bit of the concept of your film? Go ahead, but explain a little bit of the concept of your film for those who don't know as well.
So the original idea was that I would go and live bare bones for 6 months in the forest, kind of on a self-discovery journey, but also sort of thinking about development, thinking about like how man may have originally lived, thinking about how we got to this current moment where we're completely like at odds with nature. And then 3 months in is when Hurricane Maria came. Someone that had an idea of where I was came out to warn me that a category like 1 or 2 storm was on its way. And probably being naive and having not actually experienced a direct hit before, I was like, yeah, no problem. 1 or 2, I think I can deal with that. And this whole project was about living with nature. So I was like, I can't have had all the good times and now leave for the bad times. But of course, the hurricane supercharged to a category 5 in one night.
Yeah.
So that's what happened there.
And a little plug to the film, but more than anything to give a little more context to what you're talking about. You want to talk through the film and where it might be available as well for anyone who's interested?
Uncivilized.
Yeah, it's offline at the moment. We're getting new distributors, but all of the information will be on uncivilizedfilm.com or at uncivilizedfilm on social media. So once it's back up, it'll be announced there.
Cool. Let's throw it back open again. Audrey had a question or comment, so over to Audrey.
Yeah, hi, I'm Audrey. I'm in the anthropology department here at Goldsmiths. My question, there's a question now, but it was when you were speaking about the idea of destruction and that Dominican now is coming from behind the curve to perhaps ahead of the curve in terms of looking at building new future and having a different relationship. You've still got clear waters, you've still got land that's fertile. So my question is this a moment to take a lead in terms of really thinking about consciously reconfigurating, restructuring new philosophies, new ideologies within Dominica? Are you thinking about anything like that, or is anyone working on stuff like that internally?
I heard about half of it, Adam. Can you just repeat? Okay,
I'll give it an attempt, and obviously correct me if I'm misrelaying the question. A juncture point, an opportunity to reconfigure how we think about the future, and to a shift in thinking about the way forward in relation to nature, I guess, in relation to one another.
Maybe even just a society, the whole of Dominica, coming from where we know the history, but at this moment, as you said, this juncture, is there a flavour, or is there a movement, is there a sort of creative space where people are thinking consciously about the ideology of life or living, your governance, your politics, what it means to be Dominican?
Okay, Sam.
Mostly, give it to me.
Thinking the world anew, your politics, your governance, how the society is structured, as a kind of is there a sense of thinking the world anew?
Good question. I don't know if you guys heard, the Prime Minister just announced last night that we're having snap elections on December 6th.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you about politics in Dominica. I'd say it typically stays the same. I saw a lot of noise on Facebook, OSC. There had been basically like a climate resilience agency that was put in place after Maria, and a good amount of funds and efforts I know have been put into place to try and like work towards some of those goals. So whether that's like solar power streetlights and that kind of stuff, and like housing projects that take building.
He's going.
was the footage.
Just try and get it back. Bear with me 1 second, guys. I'll try and get the call back. We've had some connection problems again.
Banana tree. Yeah. But the thing, like, but he went to Caribbean school, he was in high school in Dominica, right? He wasn't really far enough, you know. He just explains, he's Dominican.
Yeah. So I'm saying there's also, I can continue?
Yeah, go ahead, please. Yeah.
I know there's also been a lot of talks about like moving towards electric public transportation, geothermal, that kind of stuff. But all of those things take a little bit longer. I would also say though, since Maria, there definitely has been like I think a reawakening to the land to some degree, and you have a lot of people started farming even more post Maria, and I think it's a good thing. It's one of those things where you realize even with this war in Ukraine, how global food supply chains can really get disrupted, and we're feeling the inflation really heavily down here as well. But it's one of those things where if you realize it, like we have the choice here of, okay, things are getting more expensive at the supermarket, but realistically, there's a whole bunch of local produce that we could eat off of if we so chose.
And the interesting thing with Dominica, with the Caribbean more broadly, is you do have this tradition of being able to turn towards that at various different points. Like in the prime example, and this is a Haitian anthropologist, Michel Rove-Trujillo, spoke about during the peak of bananas, the reason that green banana became a staple product of Dominica was not because it was this timeless tradition. The idea of fig and codfish, which now is like the staple kind of part of the diet, that didn't always exist. He said that's a product of the banana economy, so that in times of boom, when bananas were slumping, people would then turn towards green banana, and then it was a means of sustaining their family and their livelihood and their food security and stuff. But that actually was a result of a function of that economy rather than something which was some timeless tradition which had been there all along. The codfish had been there for a long time with the sailors and so on, but the fig coming in was more of a modern, or more of a recent thing, I should say.
Gotcha, that's cool.
Yeah, let's open back out again. Any more questions, reflections from the audience? Mike, I know you're here with us for a limited time, but let's see if we can open it out for one, maybe two more. Zeph's got some things to say, as you can hear. But was there any more unless
Talk to me.
I wish I could bring the laptop closer as well, so you could. He's waving. But were there any kind of parting reflections on the process, maybe, of making the film more broadly, or anything you wanted to speak to, anything that came out in the film which really kind of resonated? And that's a very general question, and we touched on so many particular themes. Hope and faith comes up quite strongly in your own film. I know that question of catastrophe and creativity that comes up, of course, in Vino's film, and that you've already kind of elaborated on. Were there any other themes that came out of that process, or out of your creative practice more?
Yeah, I guess the one that comes to mind, which someone mentioned earlier in the last question, is just like circularity. And I've been reading some more books from like indigenous perspectives. And what's interesting is that it's like a given. In those perspectives, it's a given that time and processes are either like circular or spiral. Whereas I feel like we've been conditioned in the West to think much more linearly. And so, yes, like the idea of Dominica being behind the curve and also ahead of the curve is something that I like and think about a lot. And then even, I don't know how everyone else feels right now, but you know, it feels kind of like we're at the end of a pretty good run in terms of our Western and global civilization. And I think in terms of both like how democracy and government is being run, but also in terms of like what's going on with the climate. But I also do think that there's an opportunity to reimagine things, to also know that even if everything collapses, there's ways of living and living well. Even not to say that there won't be immense suffering, people die and species die off and all of that stuff, but just, I don't know. It sounds like a lot of people I've talked to kind of sounds like there's sort of like a lot of anxiety around this like being the end, and I just don't think that it necessarily is, and that in this sort of chaos, it makes it ripe for reimagining and creativity.
I think there's something in that as well in terms of being like staring into that chaos. In this part of the world, I don't know the extent to which people stare into the chaos. They tend to look away. You know, you tend to look down at your phone, or you tend to look at often a portal into some other space. But I wonder if facing up, you were saying you were confronted by the hurricane, and facing it up and being present in that, maybe that does something in terms of how you can kind of grapple with or make sense of the future, or at least accept that you can't make sense of the future.
Mm-hmm.
That might be slightly different to, I don't know what kind of world shifting processes might happen here that are beyond humans, you know, that make humans realize how small they are. We're not often confronted by those kinds of forces in this part of the world. Yeah, that was more a comment in response to your point.
Yeah.
An affirming comment. All right, anything else to come, or should we close out?
Are the pictures available for print? The ones from the hurricane pictures, hurricane-related art pictures that you did?
You're being invited for another plug. We've asked you for a plug for the film. Now we're asking for a plug for the photo series.
Yeah, you can find them on michaelleesmedia.com and then on the print shop tab.
Okay, thank you.
All right, it's been a pleasure as always, and thank you for
Yep,
persisting with us as well, and for bringing these incredible creative visions to life in conversation with all the different artists which we have. It's been incredible.
Yeah, well, thanks for getting me on board. It's been a cool project, really.
I love it, man. Let's keep. I'll be in touch soon, anyway.
All right.
All right, cool.
Sounds good.
See you later. All right, people. That closes out the day. So not much more to say other than at 5 o'clock, which is in about 10 minutes, then we can head downstairs in the atrium of the PSH building and enjoy a wine reception, relax, connect with folks before we head off and move and do different things. For those who are interested, as an addendum to this day, we've had a series of different sessions or different activities, I should say, which we've been doing with the interns who've come over from Dominican, or the graduate interns, as well as our colleagues who've come over from Jamaica. So tomorrow we're going to go to the Natural History Museum at 11 a.m. and we've got a behind-the-scenes dip into any of the collections that happen to come from the Caribbean, which could be things like fossils and lizards in jars and all kind of different random things that they seem to have at the Natural History Museum. But we're specifically going to be showing the ones which they've gathered and taken from the Caribbean and deposited in this part of the world. So once we were invited to do that, and the guy, I think Patrick Campbell, who's showing us around, I think he's of Jamaican descent. He's really interested in making these collections accessible to Caribbean communities. So we're going to head down, check it out. There's also like a climate cafe kind of thing going on there as well. So if we want to dip into that, we can. But the tour is happening with Patrick, is from 11 a.m. tomorrow. So anyone's welcome to join, just let me know. Anyway, that closes up the day. So just to say thank you for everyone who made this possible. Pietro, thank you so much for handling all the media stuff. Maybe at some point put yourself in front of the camera just so people at home know that it's you that's responsible for making it beam out to them. For members of the team and everyone who's been involved in making this project happen. Annabel Wilson, of course, for making everything tick as project manager and also as a research associate on the project. Yuan Stowe, of course, for getting her junior colleagues here safe and sound in one piece and being the London guide who knows her way around this part of the world. But yeah, just to thank you all for coming.
Story project.
Huh?
And for facilitating the Dominican Story.
And for facilitating the Dominican Story project, being there at every step of the way.
For sure.
Every step of the way, and as office mates as well, tolerating us as well. and then Ricardo as well for being in both on the Dominican Story project and on the historical work, and obviously being Zeffy's #1 Goldsmiths guy. So thank you everyone for making this possible. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Adam. No problem. How old am I?
All right.